And welcome to this Tuesday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest. Very happy to have you guys with us. We were talking yesterday with Mike Jones on the program about a couple of things, including some opportunities. I don't know how well researched people are when it comes to betting tennis, but there are great opportunities. First round upsets at Wimbledon, and we had a monster already occur today. Of course, they're 5 hours behind us, but you had the number 3 seed, I believe, in the tournament. Might have been number 4 on the women's side. Jessica Pegula go down to an Italian player who was ranked number 117 in the world, Elisabetta Cocciaretto. And Cocciaretto gets broken at love in the very first game of the first set. Pegula comes in, as you might imagine, as an overwhelmingly heavy favorite, as she's minus 1,100 to win 100. And you're thinking to yourself, do I really want to lay that? This looks to be the proverbial veritable cinch. This was Secretariat in the Belmont, and the only thing was the horse going to win by 25 or the eventual 31-length margin. Pegula against this young Italian girl ranked 117 in the world. Pegula's coming off a win in one of the prelude tournaments that preceded Wimbledon, where the players get accustomed to playing on the grass courts, demonstrating her ability to go out there and compete on the grass, as she does well on all surfaces. But if you were thinking grass was going to be the great equalizer, you probably had to be smoking some grass to picture that the young Italian, would end up in the winner's circle in this match. But brings up kind of an interesting thing about betting, because in a zillion years, you couldn't get me to lay 1,100 to win 100 on virtually anything. And so I would not be inclined to have laid that money on Pegula. You were only getting plus 700 on the young Italian girl, Cocciaretto. And I'm not sure that was enough to entice you to make that wager. It was a very difficult thing to envision. But here's where it really gets interesting for the bettors out there, and made it kind of fun to take a look at this particular aspect of prop betting that is also readily available, as it is in all sports now, and in tennis matches, especially when you get to the majors here, it becomes a point of interest and maybe something to look into. Now, we've talked about this on the show many times over the year that we've been doing Bury Your Bookie. When I first moved to Florida from California by way of New York, I got infatuated with the game of highlight. I thought it was just brilliant. Very popular here. We didn't have a whole lot of sports to take in. You had professional football with the Miami Dolphins. We had no Miami Heat at the time. This is circa 1981. And now the Florida Panthers, two-time defending Stanley Cup champions. We didn't have the now Miami Marlins, who originated as the Florida Marlins going back to 1993. So two sports that were very popular. You had to have a lot of interest in oddball stuff if you were going to be entertained on any kind of a nightly basis, especially when it came to wagering. And the two sports were highlight and dog racing. Now, dog racing was generally conceived to be a game that you could handicap, and the theory was, and I'm not sure that I really believe this. Of course, it's extinct now for a variety of reasons, but used to draw huge crowds. They would have $1 million handles on average nights of dog racing, even during the middle of the week and on weekends. So people were really into it, and the theory was that while horses you can handicap all day long, that dogs actually ran much more truer to form than even the horses did. So there were people that thought that they could nail that. Highlight was far more arbitrary because there was the handicap system where the better players usually were in post positions that were very disadvantageous to actually going on and winning and demonstrating their superiority. There's a player here that I'm still friends with today named Joey Kornblit. He was an American player who was credited with sort of revolutionizing the way the game was played, because instead of doing those Smith-Barney commercials where they're volleying back and forth at the ping pong table and the guy says, "I say, old chap, how are your investments going?" while they're actually playing, Joey came in and devised a system where he was going for the kill shot right away. And he would throw that little two-wall job that came off the court, and everybody loved it. And his theory was, let's end the point quickly. I don't want to sit here and just volley back and forth all day. And he really revised the way the game was played, and it's still played to that level today, although you don't see it around as frequently. In fact, most of the frontons have shut down in terms of the amount of highlighter that is being played. I think by some fugazi state law, they have to operate a certain number of days to have their casino licenses, which even those are compromised. I mean, this is a state, if you're a degenerate gambler, I don't know that it's the most advantageous place to be. But Highline was fascinating, and it used to draw huge crowds. Miami Highline was known as the Yankee Stadium of Highline. You would see, from an entertainment standpoint, you would see more great plays made defensively in a Highline match than you would see in a week's worth of Major League Baseball games. It was really fascinating. And the betting centered largely, no one really was involved in win, place, and show wagering. Those pools would show like $8 in the show pool, 24 in the place pool, and maybe a couple of hundred on a given team or player in the win pool. But it was all almost exclusively based on exotics. And the central play there was quinellas, which is basically, if you're not familiar with the terminology, you have to have the first and second place finishers, but you don't have to have them as you do in perfectas and exactas in exact order. You essentially are making an exacta box, a perfecta box. So that was where all the money was in the pools, and it led to a very interesting situation where you would find yourself, say you had a 1-2 quinella box, just for example, and the one team went out there and scored the first 5 points. In the second round, where the players got up again after they finished off, and they had eight teams or eight players in each game. So, yeah, naturally compromised if you're in the eight post because you only get out there once. If you lose that point, you're not getting back up again while the points are doubling in the second round. And what would happen from a betting standpoint is say the one ran the first 5 points and you needed now the two to accumulate some points for you to win. When the one team got back out there, you had to root against your own team. Because if they won and two hadn't accumulated enough points to be in a quinella, you were going to lose your money. So it was perfect for the South Florida sports fan, as we've come to know, because this is an area here where, and maybe that's changed recently with the success of the Florida Panthers, where it's not uncommon for the fans in the stands to be rooting for the other team because everybody came from somewhere else. And the teams here, especially the newer ones, besides the Dolphins, had not really established a firm enough fan base for the visiting team not to be the actual draw at games that were taking place here in town, in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. So you often had the opposition scoring against the home team, and the crowd would erupt and go crazy. And in this case, you found yourself on occasion as a bettor rooting against the team that you had bet on because even though they were in a position to go ahead and win the game, because if they won the game and you're betting quinellas, you would end up in the losers column and end up being separated from your cash. So it's interesting because once in a while that happens, right? In horse racing, you'll have a coupled entry, two horses that are racing for the same trainer. So you have the 1 and a 1A and sometimes even a second entry, but that's more of a rarity today than it used to be. But and you think the 1 is a veritable cinch to win a race, and even though you were dead wrong, the 1A comes up and wins the race, and you end up cashing a ticket, even though the horse that you really liked ended up being nowhere, ended up running dead last. Every now and then you benefit from something like that, and that's what happened with this Pegula matchup, as it would have been impossible really to think of laying. I mean, if you were one of those people out there that laid 1,100 to win 100, I'm sorry for you. We'll be selling embalming fluid that you can gargle with right after the show. We'll give you the details on that. But and if you had Cocciaretto at plus 700, then wonderful. You're an astute. You have the instincts of Rod Laver when it comes to betting tennis, like he did playing tennis, the Rocket. You certainly should be congratulated and richly rewarded, and probably at a bigger price than 7-1. But here's where it got interesting and kind of draws the highlight comparison where you end up rooting against your own team. So Cocciaretto goes out, wins the first set. She loses the first game at Love, and she ends up winning the first set 6-2. Comes on very strongly. Pegula doesn't appear to have it. And she comes back, Cocciaretto, and wins the second set 6-3. So the over/under, you can bet the total number of games in many of these matches. I would think maybe even in all of the matches that are contested in various tournaments. And the over/under on the total number of games was 19 and a hook in this particular match. So if you were going to go ahead and bet the under, which was the favorite play, you're obviously thinking that Pegula is going to blow this woman off the court. It's going to be 6-1-6 love, which would total out to be 13 games. You're well under the number there, and you're going to the window and cashing your ticket, and hopefully picking up stacks of $100 bills where you only had to, instead of laying 1,100 to win 100 on the outcome of the match in terms of the winner with Pegula, you are thinking she's going to blow this girl out, and you're only laying 135. Much more favorable position to be in, except in this case, you happen to be dead fucking wrong because there's no way you could have seen this going in that direction with Cocciaretto winning in such an easy fashion in a cakewalk. And yet, it's better to be lucky than good sometimes, people, is it not? Because you're cashing at minus 135, even though you had no idea what was going to actually happen in the match. You were dead wrong about the outcome. And yet the total went under as Cocciaretto was the one that accomplished the blowout. And one of the more interesting things that happened early this morning in terms of wagering, where you end up rooting now for Pegula to just lose her ass in the second set because you have Cocciaretto, and I'm sure a lot of people probably hedged off and figured Pegula was going to come back and win the match anyway, which is now happening in a couple of the men's matches that were suspended yesterday, where you had the favorite looking like they were going to be, in one case, Taylor Fritz was down 2-0 to this guy Perricard, who serves the ball at about 150 miles an hour. He was a 5-1 underdog against Taylor Fritz. I thought after he went up 2-0 that it might be worth a little bit of a sniff on Fritz, who's now in a dead heat there. When the match was suspended, he had come back and won 2 tiebreakers. And so it's now 2-2 with Fritz, I would imagine, is a heavy favorite to come back today when they resume play. And having gathered all the momentum in the match yesterday when it was looking like he was making an early exit, he would have to be, I would imagine, a prohibitive favorite today to win that fifth and deciding set. So you probably could have gotten a decent price. That's one of our other theories where we've been espousing here in the program. Wait till your team and, or in this case, your player is completely dead in the water, facing impossible, insurmountable circumstances, and then go ahead and send it in. Because being a contrarian can be very profitable, and you were getting probably an enormous price on Taylor Fritz to come back from the 2-set deficit. Nonetheless, that match, as I said, ended up being suspended, and probably the time to go ahead and heavy up and press your bet on Fritz would have been when he was down those 2 sets, because we see it so often where the guy that's the upstart, Perricard's been around a little bit, clearly has the kind of skills that would make him a viable play on the grass, even at 5-1. And I think you're only getting 4-1. You had to lay 5-1 with Fritz. You were getting 4-1 on Perricard. Maybe not enough to get you to go ahead and bet him at the outset, but if you were betting against him after he was up 2-0, you find yourself today going in a very favorable position. Dead wrong about how the match was going to come out, and yet heavying up after the in-game betting took place and making a little bit of a score there possibly on Fritz today. Although still, I mean, looms is somewhat of a toss-up, but Fritz really rebounded from the grave in this match as he's done in other matches in the past, and looks like he's in a pretty good spot. And a guy that I gave you as a long shot to win the tournament, Alexander Zverev, who I've been knocking on the door of winning a major for a long time, not playing his best tennis this year. I thought, well, geez, you could bet Alcaraz, you could bet Sinner, but the odds are so prohibitive that is it really worth it? You have to maybe dig a little bit deeper and find somebody in the field that could pay you a bit of a price. Zverev kind of fit the bill at 24-1. He looks like he's going to get knocked out of the tournament in the first round, but bounces back and evens it up. That match was suspended, will be continued today as Zverev is out there against a guy who's somewhat of a problem, Arthur Rinderknecht, who has scored some upsets during the course of his career and defeated some pretty impressive players and highly ranked players, but would have been hard to picture knocking Zverev out in our 24-1 long shot play of the century. which I'm not a firm believer in Zverev, but I would rather have him at 24-1 than go ahead and try to pick between Alcaraz and Sinner at a very low price, sub 2-1. By the way, Alcaraz was pressed by Fabio Fognini into a fifth set. That had to make some Alcaraz backers pretty nervous if you had him to win the tournament at minus 135. So, all that being said, some marvelous betting opportunities are already in play at Wimbledon, and you did have Daniil Medvedev knocked out in the first round in a big upset. So take a look at that. I mean, if you're looking for something, if Major League Baseball doesn't attract you right now, there's not that much else to bet on. You have some soccer stuff going on. I'm not inclined to wager on that. But definitely take a look at Wimbledon action. And I hope you guys had the good fortune, if you were betting that Pegula match, to say, okay, Jessica's going to win. By what margin? They probably won't play. If it's 6-4, 6-4, that's what it would have taken for, or maybe a three-setter for the over total to be eclipsed. And yet you were able to cash a ticket, even though the wrong player, in many cases, or most people's betting minds, ended up winning the match, and she ended up doing it in such an efficient fashion that you were able to cash on the favored under total. I wonder what the odds were on this. I don't know what they were. I can't imagine anybody would have bet this because it hadn't happened since 1958. And it's a surprise who the player was that had accomplished this particular distinction in the past. In 1958, Roger Maris had a grand slam home run in a game, the great Roger Maris, and not known. I mean, it wasn't like Roger was Lou Brock, so this had to be a pretty funky thing. But Roger Maris had a grand slam home run, and in the same game had an inside the park home run. You would think maybe Willie Mays did something like that. Maybe, as I said, Lou Brock, who occasionally displayed some power. He'd hit about 20, 25 home runs a year, even though he was a speedster and a leadoff hitter. So a likely guy to maybe have had a home run that went out of the park and one that stayed in the park. But this guy, Abreu from the Boston Red Sox, does it yesterday. Is there anybody out there in our betting universe that literally you would have buried every book in the universe, as I said, if you had made this play? I can't imagine it's ever even offered up for a guy. We were talking about home run proposition betting last week on the show when a friend of ours hit four guys that all hit home runs and cashed at an enormous number. But I don't know what kind of price you would have received on this, but it had to be lottery numbers. And congratulations to Abreu of the Red Sox, who first guy since 1958 to have a grand slam home run in a ball game, and at the same time accomplish an inside the park homer. So if you had that, congratulations to you. I don't know what would even make that something that would occur to you, that it happened at all, much less to be able to pick the player that did it. If you did it, I hope you were a millionaire today, even if you were only laying a couple of bucks out there. Major League Baseball, we were talking about Mike Jones yesterday. He has a theory that teams coming off a road trip, and even a successful one, like our Miami Marlins did, where they swept their road trip and come into tonight's game against the Minnesota Twins on a 7-game winning streak. This was a team that you thought had no chance to do anything. I would have recommended, again, the under. It was some ridiculously low number, like 65 or 66 games. They're now projected to win 70 after this 7-game winning streak. In there against the Twins tonight, Mike said, go ahead and take a shot with the Twins. But I'm going to go against our own man, Mike Jones, who I love dearly, and I think he's a very astute baseball handicapper. But you're having to lay 145 with the Minnesota Twins today, and you're getting plus 122 with the team on a 7-game winning streak that is hitting the snot out of the baseball. They're eclipsing records. This franchise goes back to 1993. They have had some good players. As inept and pathetic as the franchise has been, as much as people would have been more in favor of the team moving and or contraction over the years that they've been in Major League Baseball, they've had their share of power hitters and guys that could help them post numbers. They've won a couple of World Series. They've had guys like Gary Sheffield, Giancarlo Stanton, had a 59 home run season. You had guys like Ozuna and Christian Yelich. There have been some bats. Louis Arise was just with us recently, even though not a home run hitter, a guy that was perfectly capable of generating runs, going 4 for 5 in a ball game. So it's not like they've been bereft of hitters over the course of their history. But this particular club, on this recent swing where they won 7 in a row, is breaking franchise records for runs scored, run differential, all kinds of crazy stuff, extra base hits. So definitely to take into consideration the fact that they're playing so well right now, and they're back home. Not a favorable spot for them because the people come disguised as empty seats that show up. Tickets for the game are as low as $12, and I would imagine they don't even draw 5,000 tonight, in spite of the recent hot streak, because the franchise is pretty much dead and buried. But I'm going to take a shot. Go against our man Mike Jones, who gave out the Twins yesterday. Would rather play the Marlins at plus 122. Pitching matchup is not necessarily that much of a mismatch, as you have a young guy on the mound for the Marlins tonight, Cabrera, who is highly regarded. He's only 2-2 on the season, 3.78 earned run average, going against Ryan for the Twins, who's having a real good year at 8-3 with a 2.86 ERA. So pitching matchup favors the Twins. But momentum, I think, greatly favors the Marlins. I'm going to go ahead and take a shot with them at plus 122 tonight and hope to cash a ticket. But my eyes will be on Wimbledon and the conclusion of those couple of matches. That's coming up shortly here after we conclude the show, with Perricard trying to redeem himself after winning the first 2 sets and losing a couple of tiebreakers to Taylor Fritz, and cashing a 4-1 ticket against Fritz, the American second highest ranked American behind Tommy Paul, who I think cruised today to an easy victory. At least he was up 2-0. And the Zverev match, we definitely need Sasha to come through, because we'll look like fools if our pick at 24-1 goes out in the opening match of the tournament. But congratulations to this young lady, Cocciaretto. Watch for the upsets in the tournament on the lawn, on the weeds at Wimbledon. All right, thanks for being with us. We'll have Scotty M tomorrow. And then on Thursday, Mike Jones rejoins us. We'll be off Friday and Monday. So good luck, everybody, on all your wagers. Thanks so much for joining us for today's edition of Bury Your Bookie.